Okay, so basically, I'm talking about the kind of form and function of the city of Lahore, that how we can change the form and function, keeping in view the current situation. So first of all, if you can see on my screen is, I'm not sure whether you can see my presentation or I would upload later. I don't know what the situation at the moment, because it shows me that I can share my presentation with you guys and hopefully you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So let's, I just wanted to, with this picture, I wanted to give a kind of brief overview, like what Lahore was before and how it looks like at the moment. Initially, as we all know, probably 50, 60 years ago, Lahore was a kind of city where, like most of developing country cities, were non-motorized mobility or kind of walking. These were the options. But with the passage of time, with the obviously with the change of land use patterns, with the change of transport needs, then motorized mobility added into the city, and but with some chaos, because there was no proper system. We were all relying on the public transport in terms of just buses and coasters. However, the paratransit was a big thing that we were facing the problem. So to solve this issue somehow, we found that at the moment there are two options: the bus rapid transit option and the light rail option. So bus rapid transit option initially came, as we all know, in 2013, and recently is this one, orange line option. So currently we are at the stage where Lahore is having a light rail and bus rapid transit. So my presentation basically starts from this point, that how we can proceed further, how we can make Lahore a kind of environment friendly, more livable, kind of walkable. And what we see in Europe and other developed countries, it's more of the focus is on child friendly and more inclusive, where all the communities are engaged. So taking this advantage from the current situation and from the past of the Lahore, I found from the literature approach, which is called neo-traditional neighborhood design approach. And it is a common a strategy to design which started from United States, but currently in modern urbanization, there are kind of options which is basically relying on just walking and non-motorized mobility, where people are moving. So the common approach for this one is that it's the people who decide what to do, and the planners are the one who decide basically that how the people have to behave. So all about this is that we can say that it's all about the design of the city and the policymakers who want to do what the people have to do. So it's a kind of an approach where you have to divide your whole area into smaller neighborhoods, and you have to limit your automobility. It's somehow, you can say it's closely related to a TOD concept, which is transit oriented development. It's quite famous, but there is a small difference between these two approaches. TOD basically focuses on to make more commercial benefits out of the development along the transit. However, this new traditional approach basically relies on the community-oriented focus, where commercial development is not part of it, but the more inclusive community with more urban spaces, with more walking areas, with more bike paths, and these kind of things. You can say that that's a common phenomena. Now I would come towards quickly that what are the main features of this particular approach. So first of all, we have to think about that the public transit should be the main key or the bone of this whole development sector. Then we have to add in the walking communities that are part of it. Then we have to add more functional uses, which would be at certain places, but within the radius of 5 to 7 kilometers, we'd say. And eventually, it should be more area-based. It can be like gridiron patterns, it could be circular patterns, whatever suits to that particular neighborhood, it goes with that. And one important or the key consideration for this step is that it can't be done lonely. It's not that the urban planners can do it, or we can say the real estate developers could do it. So it's a kind of inclusive development approach where transit planners, designers, real estate developers, and particularly the private stakeholders, they have to be part of this approach. And finally, all together, they have to move forward. So in case of Lahore, I think there are two things we already have. We have the kind of main network of, at the moment, transit, public transit. We have the approach of mixed uses already. What we are missing at the moment is the non-motorized mobility. And if you see, even after having these two options, the light rail and the bus rapid, I've been working on this project thoroughly from, I think, last 5 to 6 years now. With this approach, even not a single pedestrian signal has been introduced into the city. There is no pedestrian crossing concept which came after this. So it's a kind of approach which we are still having and adopting, but more on I would say motorized mobility concept. We didn't bother to provide infrastructure, particularly for the pedestrians or particularly for the users who have to come and approach this thing with the transit. So this is at the moment a situation, and I think if we say how to start this thing, in Lahore, I had made a kind of pilot study for that. There is like one particular corridor, and I took 3 different stations where the possibility is higher. And I have taken some examples from the literature, for example, from Curitiba, where this approach started. They all depend upon the non-mobility and the sectioning of the sections. If you see in front of you is the history of this BRT, where Jamie Lerner, who was their mayor, he started this concept, and was all depending upon the public transportation, then more integrated urban spaces. Then he has a kind of citizen participation, and they made a kind of inclusive plan. They restricted the car mobility. They restricted somehow the other modes, and a more focus like how this thing can be improved, used to improve the environment of the city. Recently in Sundogo, South Korea, this particular approach has been adopted, and they have totally changed the complete streets of the along the transit. They have made even quarter-mile distance of all the commercial buildings, residential building, and financial sections. So keeping in view these lessons, if we see what we have, the current situation in Lahore, I would just like quickly to show with a few pictures. We are having the mass transit, but with totally exclusive approach, where you can see in front of you are the situation of the pedestrians, how they are facing. There's no proper infrastructure for them. However, in contrast, the paratransit is going to be linked somehow informally, or I would say illegally, the part of it, because if you want to make it a kind of a feeder service or transit service, then we have to work on it, how the pedestrians and particularly the other modes of less mobility options can be integrated. This is a very unique picture I found during my field data case study, that we are somehow promoting this concept as a kind of, the mega transport project, and it's more like a huge infrastructure project. So what I found at the moment is the missing components in this are, there is no approach for transit development. There is a silent role for urban planners and silent roles of urban planning buyers. Somehow I don't blame them, because they have never been considered a part of stakeholders, and they were not involved in the meeting, but I have found during my field study. Then there is totally lack of the plan of urban spaces that we have to consider. During our surveys, we found that still in Lahore, more than 40 to 50% people are still approaching this approach with the facility with the either with the walking or through paratransit rickshaws. I wouldn't blame, and interestingly, the approach with walking is not by choice, is a kind of by force, because they don't have any other alternatives for that. So whether the infrastructure for pedestrians is there or not, they are forced to do by walking, and they have to reach the station for that. So this is the area where I think we can work further, and this has potential to work further. So finally, identified a kind of model which can work in terms of Lahore. It's like 5 steps model. We'll start with the pedestrian environment. That is the first thing, that we provide the pedestrian environment to the users. Secondly, we have to integrate more open spaces. Then the third step is we have to really promote high quality walking areas other than transit, like overall the culture of the city. Then the third step, which repairs a kind of zoning and regulations where what a lot of governance and institutional work is involved. And then eventually we go towards the urban densification. So it's a kind of 5-step model, but at the moment or at this stage, we can focus on first step, which is like provide the pedestrian environment. And we have to see, like, particularly within a 1 kilometer distance, what kind of pedestrian infrastructure we can provide, and what kind of pedestrian facilities we can provide to encourage and particularly to, enhance the back potential of the city, which was already people were using the smaller communities towards walking trend. And this thing is somehow missing, even with the coming after having the mass transit, still this thing is not focused. So I particularly focus on that point, that the provision of safe walking areas, provision of safe walking communities can be the first step to make city again a livable city, a more kind of inclusive and safe community, particularly for the kids oriented, or I would say a more functional kind of city, where we can say that this thing can change not only the form of the city, but also the mobility functions. I would like to share like one very basic learning that I have been observed from last few years here in Australia, that within 5 kilometer radius, there is one compulsory provision of kindergarten, one compulsory provision of your primary school, and even one compulsory smaller hospital kind of facility. And the basic purpose is you don't need to travel with the car or with other mode of transport, but with the non-motorized mobility, or even with the walking distance, you can cut off that motorized trip, and you can achieve it. So this approach is still very common these days in Europe, and they are focusing towards like moving more towards the walking steps, moving towards bicycling, particularly in Netherlands, I would say, where this concept of this humankind cities, you say, that you have initiated. There, the use of the motorbike, like bicycling, is the key of the city environment. So this is somehow is the point that I wanted to raise through today's presentation, that instead of focusing on more and more motorized mobility options, we should at the moment give a stop, and we should think that how we can actually change the form and how we can change the functionality of the city with the infrastructure we already have, or we have already invested in the form of mass transit. So what kind of advantage we can take out of it, and what to cut this long story short is like, okay, just take a pause and see within those transit lines how we can take back the older image of the city, and how we can basically convince people to come back and start moving on the healthy options. So this is the main objective of my today's presentation, that we can reshape the form and the function of the whole city by taking just one basic step, like take a break, use the already provided mass transit projects, and come back to the reality, like how we can actually enhance the sustainability, environment friendly options for the city. Thank you very much, and I hope that's in time, and we can, if you have questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sadaf. This was very informative, and there is a necessary paradigm shift needed here to design an infrastructure that prioritizes people and health. So we know the cities that are playing a leading role in active mobility, and I would like to share a video. I hope it works. So do let me know if this
achieve accessibility, livability, sustainability, and health goals. The 17 million Dutch own almost 23 million bicycles, and a quarter of all trips, nationwide, are made by bicycle. Still, the Dutch government wants to get another 200,000 commuters out of their car and onto their bicycles. In their new program called Dutch Cycling, the Dutch Cycling Embassy explains why that is such a good idea. Cycling is inexpensive. For people, the annual costs of riding a bike is approximately 300 euros, whereas the annual cost of driving a car is approximately 8,500 euros. And for society, a kilometer covered by bicycle yields a social benefit of 68 euro cents, whereas buses cost society 29 cents per kilometer traveled and cars 37 euro cents. Cyclists spend more in local shops. Although cyclists spend less per visit, they spend more overall because they shop more often than people driving. Cycling is also good for the environment. Not only does the product life cycle of a bicycle generate minimal carbon emissions, the local air quality improves drastically when people switch from cars to bicycles. It reduces 65% nitrogen oxide per kilometer traveled. Public space is improved by turning car space into people space. This improves the local environment. Cycling is silent and helps to reduce traffic noise. Riding a bicycle is a healthy, fun and low-impact form of exercise for all ages. Employees cycling to work are less likely to call in sick. Cycling keeps you fit longer and your immune system young. Cycling regularly boosts physical fitness and prolongs life expectancy by 3 to 14 months. Cycling 30 minutes every day is equivalent to the weekly recommended level of physical activity. It also reduces the risk of serious diseases and depression, 40% less for cancer, 52% less for heart diseases, and over 40% less for premature death. Cycling makes you happy. 59% of all cyclists associate cycling with joy, and only 2% dislike cycling. Dutch children are the happiest in the world. Cycling allows them to reach destinations safely and gives them the feeling of freedom. Cycling improves the quality of life. It is associated with convenience, independence, flexibility, and always arriving on time. Cycling creates public space. Bicycles take up less space than cars, both for driving and in the amount of space taken up by parking. Where you can park one car, you can park 10 bicycles. Within the urban environment, locations are easier to reach by bicycle, or a combination of bicycle and public transport, than by car. Cycling saves you time. Without the need to search for a parking spot, the bicycle is the fastest means of transportation within the urban environment. Separating cyclists from motorized traffic results in fewer accidents, and cycling cities have fewer casualties among cyclists. Developing a clear road safety program reduced 1,600 traffic casualties between 1998 and 2007 in the Netherlands. Lower traffic speeds result in fewer deadly accidents. The likelihood of a deadly accident at speeds 30 km per hour or less is approximately 75% less than at 50 km per hour. Cycling encourages social participation. As a social activity. Cycling keeps the elderly socially connected and active for longer. The Dutch believe their approach to cycling can be applied in other countries too. Cities and regions around the world can benefit from Dutch experience. Dutch cycling could also improve your quality of life. Society.
So I think there is always something we have got to learn from Dutch cycling. They have such an active mobility and healthy lifestyle. Their children are happy. People of all age are cycling. So maybe we can learn from them. So next we have Mr. Kuram. He is a chartered town planner of Royal Institute Planning UK. He's a vice chairman PCATP and managing director Shahrsas. He's going to share with us the major challenges the commuter face in Lahore. Mr. Kuram Farid, you can start your presentation now. You can unmute please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Amna, for giving me opportunity to talk about the commuter in the city of Lahore. Lahore is the second largest city in Pakistan, and somehow there's issues related to commuting within Lahore are enormous. They ranges from school run to job run and the layer and intercity. They are variety of them. We look at, if we go through the historical data, the number of vehicles in Lahore continues to increase every day, and the quality of public transport provided to the inhabitant is not of the level that is considered sufficient. During last 5 years, the ownership rate has grown 5 times more than the population growth rate of the city, resulting from 56 to 116 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. Based on these statistics, city is in dire need of urban transport master plan, which is going to address all segments of daily trips. Should I share my screen? Stop. Okay. Let's talk about the initial intervention which has been adopted for the city of Lahore. In 2013, the first BRT, bus rapid transit system, was introduced, which was designed on one of the most busiest route, that is the Firozpur Road. And then there is another route which is going to be inaugurated soon. That is the Orange Line, which is planned on Multan Road. BRT Lahore connects the two ends of the city, running from north to south with total length of 27 kilometers. The route covers dozens of residential and commercial localities along the city main artery. That I mentioned, Firozpur Road, generating 27 stops for each kilometer along its way. The whole operation of the system is based on intelligent transport system, and the system currently operates a fleet of 86 buses moving with an average speed of 86 km/h. The daily ridership of the system exceeds 140,000 passengers, with peak hour ridership being 10,000 passengers per hour per direction, as claimed by the officials. The BRT system of Lahore runs on the main arteries of the
I think something is wrong with his internet connection. Let's go on. I think his internet connection is lost. So let me share another video how Ghent adopted the urban mobility, healthy urban mobility concept through innovation. So there is another video I'd like to share with you.
The circulation plan is very important for Ghent, very important for life quality. We have an area where there are 7 parts. There is a car-free zone in the center and then 6 parts around it. For pedestrians, for cyclists, for public transport, nothing changed, but for car drivers, something changed. If they wanted to go from one part to another part, they had to go to the ring road. There was no connection between the parts possible with the car. So you get fewer cars.
We are here at the R40, as we called it in Ghent, which is the inner ringway. If you have to go from one section to another section, you have to pass via this ringway. This means that you see a lot more cars here.
So since the circulation plan has been introduced, we can see that there's absolutely a decrease in the number of cars in the city, an increase in walking and cycling. It also goes hand in hand with the parking measures that have been introduced. So we have more parking on the border of the city and people just walking or cycling or using public transport to enter the city.
The circulation plan was actually part of the mobility plan that also included the parking plan, a plan to enroll a cycling network in the city of Ghent. And the targets within the mobility plan were set on 35% of cycling in 2030. Now, 2 years after the circulation plan, we have a mode share of 35%, which was actually the target for 2030. So it seems that we have to rethink about the targets.
We're standing at the Commuters, which is the busiest bike street in Ghent. And before it was too narrow, like you see there's this narrow passage on the side. People were biking there. It became impossible to pass on both directions. So now bikers are driving on the streets just beside there, and they've got the whole street for them. It became a bicycle street by law also, which means cars can't overtake bikers anymore, so they have the whole space of the street just for them.
Speed limit is 30 kilometers an hour here. That way you see that cyclists are taking it a little bit over, and it is quite safe, and you don't always need separate bike lanes.
If you want to set up a cycling street, you really need a street with a low intensity of cars. And actually the circulation plan gave us the chance to increase the number from 8 cycling streets in 2017 to 18.
We can go by bicycle to our working place, to school, and so on. 20 years of consequent politics in that direction to make it a sustainable and a social city also.
That you can just let children walk and cycle alone to school, for example. So working on modal shift is really important, and making sure that this mind shift is there, that people just automatically choose sustainable modes of transport.
30% of the inhabitants of Ghent don't own a car anymore, and raising their kids with the idea it's not necessary to have a car. Ghent has an ambition to be the biggest city of car sharing systems, so hopefully in the future the new generation will be used to that idea that you can use a car whenever it's needed, but you don't have to own it.
We have many rivers in Ghent, and in the 60s they filled up the rivers to get parking space for cars. 1 year ago this was still a parking for cars, and we reopened the river. This is important that we give water a place in the city. If you get parking spaces away, it's always a battle. For people who are parking, it's always very important they have their space. But what is amazing is that the moment the parking spaces are away, the city is still living and everything is still working. This is a new piece of infrastructure to get cyclists and pedestrians on a safe manner to the city center, because it was very hard for people who are living at the eastern side of the city to get in the center. And now with this underpass, it's possible to get in the center on a safe manner.
Mr. Kram has joined us back. Please, you can proceed now. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry for the bad internet.
It's okay.
Now, as we know, there are 9 towns in Lahore, but 60 to 80% of the area which has no rapid mass transit system. So out of 8 to 10% of the BRT commuters, they only use feeder bus service for their next journey. The lack of feeder buses, lack of routes along with time, accessibility, cost, and other reasons have caused people to prefer other modes of transport, especially paratransit over the public transport. The orange line, which is going to be initiated soon, is comprised on 27.1 kilometer long track with 26 stations from Neighbourhood to Ali Town. Each car of orange line, which will be carrying roughly 1,000 passengers per trip, and initially it's going to cover 250,000 passenger demand. And with the passage of time, it will be 500,000 passenger per day in 2025. Coming towards the speedo bus, which actually feed in the BRT, and it will also be covering the orange line. Initially, there are 8 phases planned, and out of the 8 phases, phase one has partially been implemented. In phase 1, there are 252 stops, 19 transfer stations, and 200 buses are being run. It goes up to Rana Town in north, then Pakistan Kidney and Liver Transplant Unit, PKLI, and Bhatta Chowk in the east, Purana Khana in south, and Thokonyazbek Demo Station and Babra Town in south. The overall project under the name of Integrated Public Transport Network Lahore comprises of 8, which I have mentioned, and there are 5 total phases. And the number of buses which are going to be part of these 5 phases in phase
Mr. Kram, we can't hear you.
which I said only 200 buses are being my internet is just bugging me up.
So you can just try to wind up then.
Then the most important of in city commuting, that is the walkability and cycling. As most of us know that in Lahore, our whole concentration is on the widening of road to build a signal-free corridor and negating walkability, bicycle lanes. There is no such phenomena in Lahore. Even the most developed cities in Lahore, like Beria Town, DHA, they don't have any footpath which can lead to a school, or shopping center, or a workplace. So in a recent survey, only 16% of daily commuters they ride bicycles, and out of whole commuter, only 14% says they use bicycle occasionally. We have compared Lahore, Lahore situation with Istanbul and Glasgow. In Istanbul, they started in 2010, 2006 to integrate pedestrianization in the cycle master plan. That comprised on 1,050 kilometer lanes all over Istanbul by 2023. And that includes cycle lanes, cycle trails, advanced cycle box, shared bicycle lanes. So the impact which has given on the city of Istanbul, it is huge. And mostly the people has shifted. The businesses has gone. The businesses has gone much better, and the health of the citizens improved relatively high. The next, the city is the Glasgow. Glasgow has strategic plan for which is going to be completed in 2025. Since 2006. They have increased bicycle network from 116 kilometers to 310 kilometers, which is 160% of overall the length, and 11,000 trips into and out of the city per day by bicycle. The overall impact, which is 327 million vehicles per kilometer every traffic volume, which is addressed by the bicycles. The main objective behind to regenerate the Glasgow and the focus being put on bicycling was to give tourists and the residents a city which is livable, walkable, and attract business and economy from all over the world. Now, if we look at the challenges which the city of Lahore is facing, although we have BRT and Orient Line is going to initiate in the next few months, I have observed and noticed that test runs are being made. But these two lines will not be enough. We need to have an integrated bus network, which is going to feed all these two BRT and Orient Line to make them successful, and also the result which we are expecting, those are achievable. At the same time, we have to give awareness to the public so that the gender discrimination we can disassociate in female and other segment of population to commute within our bus and mass transit system. With the presence of fewer buses, feeder buses in the system, not only the feeder buses, we have to allow other bus network which are going to not only support existing network but also enhance the mobility of overall commuter in the country, in the city of Lahore. And like we see in Europe and America and even Australia, that there are daily bus passes, there are weekly bus passes, there are monthly bus passes, there are annual bus passes, and that bus pass is can be used on all network, even the trains and the buses and light rail. Even you can rent a bike share, which we don't have in Pakistan, but the same card you can use at all segments. We have to discourage signal-free corridor, which basically has bisected our main arteries like Firozpur Road, even Main Boulevard, Gulberg, and Jail Road for that matter. From one side to another side, even the courier guy, they cannot deliver parcel because the traffic is so fast, and it's just almost impossible to cross the road. So instead of making our streets within the city signal free, we need to concentrate on how we can give them better pedestrian footpaths, and also we need to start incorporating bicycle lanes, and also initiate bus lanes where we cannot run light rail or BRTs. We need to incorporate bus lanes, dedicated bus lanes, which are going to make the transport system more efficient and fast. This is the whole of Lahore, which showing the picture. Required number of buses at the moment, if we look at the population, that is 11,000 buses, and 600 with the 600 kilometer long major roads, there are no footpaths, there are no bicycle lanes, with 2 only lane and BRT system. I think there is a lot to be done, and although we have recently evolved different policies for Lahore building bylaws and land use rules and regulations, and even the new master plan is already been initiated. I will make sure that I would request all the authorities that when the new master plan is going to be developed, our prime focus should be on development of bicycle lanes, bus lanes, and also the pedestrian footpaths. And there should be the master plan for bicycle lanes all over Lahore, and also those should be available on website, so that if we need to make our trip on by walking or by bicycle, one can clearly know which way one can go, keeping in view the safety. Because if we look at the statistics, Pakistan has highest number of casualties. Recently, 2090 autopsies were made, and out of the 2090, 883 deaths were because of road accidents. And out of 883, 563 deaths were pedestrians who were bypassed by the road or using some sort of road crossing. So we have to ensure that when we are talking about urban mobility, the pedestrians, instead of focusing on car-led city, we need to focus on pedestrian-led cities. We need to provide a comprehensive plan where they can stop for a bus. Even if we look at the bus stops, you can hardly find a decent bus stop on the feeder buses which are commuting in Lahore, which are taking care of most of the commuter in Lahore. But in the absence of proper network, in the absence of proper infrastructure, no one is going to use that huge that infrastructure, the buses, and the public money we are wasting on these. So in order to make sure that the money is well spent and is being used for the purpose which is meant for, we just only do one intervention at one time, by providing BRT, by providing Ori line, by providing feeder buses. We need to do more to make sure that if a resident or a child when leave from his house, he or she can go safely to the bus stop, and from the bus stop they can go anywhere in the city. This is another network of we can see the ring road, and some of the Lahore is at the moment well connected. If we compare to the rest of the cities in the Pakistan, it is well connected through motorways, to rail, and through airports. But when a commuter comes into Lahore, we have failed to provide a system through which they can meet up with their expectations. As I said, 14.2 persons per 100,000 people, that is a fatality rate, which is almost double from the developed world. So we need to incorporate how we are going to best optimize these fatality rates and reduce them. And then there are cultural issues. There's a saying that we can we need to set an example, like in Belgium, what they did from one neighborhood, they started bicycling in one neighborhood, and the other neighborhood they automatically adopted that, and they have seen that it's not something which is which you can't do, or it's a fun. So in Pakistan we have to introduce such initiatives through which bicycling can be adopted in our daily life. Then the commuting related to recreation, work, health, fitness, and well-being, they are also very less if we compare to the rest of the world. People have tendency, if they have to travel up to 5 kilometers, they prefer going on bicycle, and then they prefer adopting any other mode of transport. Yes, this was my presentation. This is the chaotic situation in the end when we don't have any system in place. You can see clearly there is no pedestrian footpath. Everything is so mingled up that even pedestrian, bicycle, motorcyclist, cargo trucks, and rickshaws, they are mixed up, and we need to segregate. We need to prioritize that when there is a bicycle lane, where there is a pedestrian footpath, they are secure enough to give them a feel that they are safe. Thank you very much. Any question? I'll be happy to answer.